can you discover in a cave? Teachings of Buddha, a gallery of paintings, an architectural wonder. In fact, all and your true self. The incredible heritage caves of Ajanta and Ellora. A new discovery every time you meet.
दिल्ली के नथे कूचे और आके मुसव्वर हैं, जो शक्ल नजर आई तस्वीर नजर आई।
घर आए तेरी सखी मोरे पिया घर आए भाग लगे इस आंगन को भाग लगे इस आंगन को तेरी सखी
दिल वालों की मतवाली दिल्ली।
India, incredible India.
India, the land of Buddha. An extraordinary journey begins in this sacred place where he took his first steps on the path to enlightenment. This is the land where he first spread his word, where people heard, and where his life took shape. Discover for yourself the journey of Buddha to his final resting place. Immerse yourself in his life here in India, the land of Buddha.
Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'd like to request all of you to take your respective seats. And at the very outset, we'd like to graciously call upon our special invitees gracing this occasion. First, the Honorable Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Dr. P. Nandalal Veerasinghe, and the High Commissioner of India here in Sri Lanka, His Excellency Gopal Bagle, to take your respective seats on the stage, please. And we are also expecting the arrival of the Honorable State Minister of Finance of Sri Lanka, Mr. Shehan Semasinghe, shortly. So at the very outset, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to tender you all a very special warm welcome to this interaction on the subject towards a stronger bilateral economic partnership and shared prosperity, a discussion on the use of national currencies for economic transactions between India and Sri Lanka. The relationship between India and Sri Lanka, which is more than 2,500 years old, is indeed characterized by a shared legacy of intellectual, cultural, religious, and linguistic interactions, apart from the ever-strengthening linkages of trade, finance, commerce, investments, development partnerships, as well as cooperation in the fields of education, defense, etc. The growing partnership between India and Sri Lanka, especially in the economic sphere, has proved to be of immense value, particularly in Sri Lanka's difficult times. Salient aspects such as trade, development assistance, and investments have remained resilient. In fact, India was Sri Lanka's largest trade partner in the year 2021, and also Sri Lanka's third largest investor overall, apart from being one of its largest development partners. We'd like to tender a special warm welcome to the Honorable State Minister of Finance, Mr. Srihan Semasinga, joining us now. So, ladies and gentlemen, in order to build upon this strong framework and further enhance the economic linkages between the two countries, including the bilateral trade, the High Commission of India is today organizing and facilitating an exchange of views between the stakeholders from both sides on the salient issues of use of Indian Rupee, INR, in trade settlements between India and Sri Lanka. We have arranged a rich and adequate agenda for today's program, which we believe will be useful for all of you. So, ladies and gentlemen, whilst welcoming, especially our special invitees, Dr. P. Nandalal Veerasinghe, the Honorable Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, the High Commissioner of India here in Sri Lanka, His Excellency Gopal Bagle, and Honorable State Minister of Finance here in Sri Lanka, Mr. Srihan Semasinga, we would like to also acknowledge the presence of Mr. Mahinda Sirivardhana, Secretary to the Treasury, Mr. R.M.P. Ratnayaka, Deputy Secretary to the Treasury, Mrs. T.M. J.Y.P. Fernando, Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Mr. P.B.S.C. Nonis, Director General of Sri Lanka Customs, Ms. T.T. Upulmali Prematilaka, Controller General of the Department of Imports and Exports Control, Mr. Priyantha Fernando, Chairman of the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority, Presidents and the Chairpersons of various business and industry associations in India and Sri Lanka, senior officials from the government of Sri Lanka, representatives from various Indian and Sri Lankan banks, friends from the media, and all other distinguished invitees, guests, and participants. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to convey special acknowledgement for the team from Reserve Bank of India, who is gracing this occasion today, especially online mode. Right, so ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to start the proceedings. We have got 4 presentations, 3 physical and 1 online to start the proceedings. Would like to first call upon Mr. Ravindra Kumar Jha, the country head, Sri Lanka State Bank of India, to start the proceedings with your corresponding presentation. Please welcome Mr. Ravindra Kumar Jha.
Good afternoon to all of you. My respect, Honorable, I say my warm regards to Mr. Honorable Srihan Semasinga, State Minister of Finance from Government of Sri Lanka, our Governor CBSL, Mr. P. Nandalal Veerasinghe, and His Excellency Sri Gopal Bagle, our High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka, and all distinguished senior officials from CBSL and Government of Sri Lanka, and distinguished guests to this esteemed discussion about the probability or potential of INR trade between the Sri Lanka and India. So this is a very first and foremost, the trade relationship between India and Sri Lanka has huge potential because of the immediate neighborhood. The relationship between the Indian and Sri Lankan economy is, as told in the introduction, has long historical background, and currently India is the largest trading partner with the Sri Lanka because of the proximity also, number one, and most importantly, the cost of doing business is very important in any trade transaction, which drives the transaction on its own merit. So because of the proximity, because of the compatibility of the demand and those things, India and Sri Lanka are ideally placed to grow the business together, and mutually both can get immense benefit out of it. Overall trade, as it is mentioned, is between the India and Sri Lanka is $5.45 billion last year, and export to India is also around $829 million. And India, and there is an excellent framework established because of the free trade agreement which is present between the India and Sri Lanka, and it is facilitating trade through various aspects. On the favorable tariff structures are there. India is also one of the largest contributor of the FDI to the Sri Lanka, and on the tourism side also, India is one of the major contributor, and keeping in view of the Indian economic growth, which is happening consistently over the years, these trends is likely to get more momentum in the coming years after having, if we will exploit it fully, sir. So there are, as far as INR and LKR trade transactions are concerned, at the regulatory level, both the Government of India, Government of Sri Lanka, and both the regulators, Reserve Bank of India at India and Central Bank of Sri Lanka here, they have taken the major, they have set the major milestones for starting the transactions, and RBI has issued instructions and specific guidelines also in this regard for the settlement of the trade transactions between India and Sri Lanka in INR. Central Bank of Sri Lanka also issued an instruction and declared INR as one of the designated currencies. It was a great step, and it gives so many enablers for the banks to proceed further. INR, currently the issue is key. We have, in fact, State Bank of India is one of the leading banks in India, and after this, we have already started the process, and our Nostro account with India has made operational, and in fact, today we completed the first trade transaction in INR on a pilot basis. It has been done successfully today itself, and that was an export transaction from India, and the importer from Sri Lanka has given us in the proceeds in LKR, and we have successfully remitted that amount to the exporter in INR. So that we have already started the process today on a pilot basis. And this is, our belief is with the experience we will gain in the trade transaction, this momentum now the momentum will only grow, and we will able to cater to the demands of the exporter and importer here. Few challenges what we are facing now is currently to fully utilize the potential for this trade mechanism. Currently we are using one intervening currency or cross-currency transaction we are doing. Because if somebody is providing the importer here is providing us the remittance in LKR, we are using USD or any hard currency for the conversion, and we are sending it in INR. Slowly, our hope is with the evolving scenarios and enhanced level of trade transactions, with the intervention of regulators, CBSL in Sri Lanka and Reserve Bank of India in India, and both the governments, possibly someday we will able to do the direct conversion between the LKR and INR. And if that will happen, that will be a great enabler for the real boost in LKR INR trade or use of INR currency in the trade. Although for the last few days, fortunately, the availability of dollar and all those things has improved significantly in local market, and this is paying a great support for us to increase transaction on LKR INR mechanism further. So our hope is that as per the vision of Government of India and Government of Sri Lanka and regulators, we have started the process. It has already, and it will grow only, and over the years, the main benefit will be for both the countries, because the dependency of importer in Sri Lanka will drastically reduced to the hard currencies, USD and Euro and other currencies. And we are hopeful that INR will slowly develop as a viable alternative. So once again, thank you to all of you, and we are hopeful that we will play a very valuable contribution in enhancing the trade under this mechanism. Thank you. Thank you to all.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ravindra Kumar Jha, the country head, Sri Lanka, for the State Bank of India, starting off the proceedings with the first presentation. Next, we'd like to call upon Mr. R.M.N. Jivanta, the Deputy General Manager of the International Treasury and Investment of the Bank of Ceylon, for the presentation by Bank of Ceylon. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jivanta.
Good evening, everybody. Your Excellency Gopal Bagle, the High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka, Honorable Shehan Semasinghe, State Minister of Finance, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, Honorable Governor of Sri Lanka, and other distinguished invitees. I'll be representing Bank of Ceylon, and I'll be doing a short presentation on trading experience in Indian rupees. Everybody know India and Sri Lanka have a long-lasting and growing commercial and economic relationship over the years. In 2021, India was the largest trading partner to Sri Lanka, having more than USD 5 billion. And also, we know that many Indians, significant number of Indians coming to Sri Lanka as tourists annually. And BOC has a presence in India, Chennai. We have a fully fledged branch in India, Chennai. We have opened this branch in 1995, and we are basically having large network of customers covering many states in India. Of course, transacting with INR is not new to Bank of Ceylon. We have been providing Indian devotees the continuous service when they have annual PS in Sri Lanka, especially to Kachatiu Island. So we basically exchanging INR currency with the approval of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka to LKR, and we are given LKR for them to spend in Sri Lanka. So this is not new transaction INR to Bank of Ceylon. Of course, we know that we have a trading mechanism under ACU. So we have seen many deficiencies under ACU mechanism. different time zones and different currencies also involved. And we know that the base currency is USD, and the prior day funding also required. So, but after introduction of this INR as a trading currency, we can avoid these deficiencies in big way. And we know that Indian rupee is a global currency now. Many countries, especially Russia, Mauritius, and including Sri Lanka, are using this currency for trade settlements. And this Indian currency will become very soon a global currency. So we also have the same view on that. And a special day for Sri Lanka on the 26th August last year. Central Bank has listed the INR as designated currency. We have 16 designated currency including INR. And simultaneously, Bank of Ceylon was able to open first INR Nostro account with the help of Bank of Ceylon Chennai, and we executed the first transaction December last year. Up to now, we have completed almost 10 to 15 million Indian rupee transactions. So it's very happy news. And we are educating more Indian Sri Lankan importers to use INR for their trading settlements. And these are the some of benefits having INR 24/7 settlement systems, and also the same time zone. Sri Lanka and India have same time zone, and also immediate funding, and there is no very less cost Indian bank-to-bank transfer. So when you're doing Indian rupee transaction, we can have these benefits. And benefits to exporters in India and importers, especially in India, Sri Lanka. So pricing will be done in Indian rupees. When they export, their pricing will be done in Indian rupees. There is no much fluctuation in currency. And also, when we accommodate Indian rupee transaction, exporters in India, importers in Sri Lanka also can avoid their Indian rupee and LKR fluctuations. And there won't be any settlement delays also. So this is a 24/7 settlement transactions are happening in Indian banking systems. And as a premier bank in Sri Lanka, Bank of Ceylon has many initiatives to take up this Indian rupee once the central bank has listed as a designated currency. We have taken many measures. We were the first bank to open INR account, and we executed many transactions with India. And also, we give competitive interest rate INR LKR to our importers. So by doing that, we encourage them to use more INR transaction for their trading settlements. So the way forward. And we are negotiating with another bank in India, indigenous bank in India, subject to the RBI approval, to open another INR account, INR Nostro account. So the Bank of Ceylon management has the view that it's better to have Indian indigenous bank with another Nostro account. So we are actually progressing, we are working on that. And also with the new ferry service between Sri Lanka and India, we'll be having another collection center. Now, presently also, Bank of Ceylon has many branches, more than 650 branches island-wide. All the branches, the customers can do Indian rupee transaction by using this branch network. And also we have collection centers in every airport, Bandaranaike International Airport, Palali, Mattala, everywhere you have. So the Indian tourists, many Indian tourists are actually encashing their Indian rupees, especially at Bandaranaike International Airports. Basically, we are having large amount of Indian rupee currencies at the moment in our hand. And we were able to sell 80% of this collection to the Indian businessmen, Sri Lankan businessmen who are going to India for their trade transactions. So this ferry service also will be having another collection center to collect whatever the Indian rupees there, and also to suggest that if there is any excess Indian rupees, now generally when we are having foreign currency excess, we are actually exporting to Singapore. So we suggest to have at least to have a local Indian bank to accept whatever the excess Indian currency and give us a dollar or a LKR. That will be more beneficial to our banking sector. So educational campaigns also launching in a big way, and we have actually started to educate our import, especially Colombo PETA customers, to use for their trade transaction, to the settlement transaction, INR currency. And we have seen that they're actually using INR as a trade settlement currency. And we'll be conducting more awareness program, educate our importers to use INR. So by doing that, we expect, number one bank in Sri Lanka, Bank of Ceylon, expect that our importers will use in big way this INR settlements, or INR currency for their trading settlements. Thank you very much. Thank you for the time given to Bank of Ceylon.
Thank you very much. Bank of Ceylon, the Deputy General Manager of International Treasury and Investment, Mr. R.M.N. Jivanta. Next, we would like to call upon, ladies and gentlemen, the General Manager Treasury of the Indian Bank. Please welcome Mr. Satish Kumar.
Good evening, everyone. Honorable Shyan Simasinghe, State Minister of Finance, Government of Sri Lanka. His Excellency, Mr. Gopal Baglan, High Commissioner of India in Sri Lanka. And Dr. P. Nandlal Veerasinghe, Honorable Governor of Central Bank of Sri Lanka, and all distinguished guests. For me, it is a grateful opportunity for us to introduce us to the August gathering here, the Indian Bank, which is one of the largest banks in India, public sector owned bank, established in 1907, having geographical spread across the country with 21,177 touch points across the country. If we see the performance of the bank, it has a total business of 10.5 trillion rupees of business, in which the deposits are 6 trillion rupees and advances and 4.5 trillion rupees, with a CD ratio of more than 75%, with net NPA of 1% and provision coverage ratio of 93.59%. If we see the strength of the bank, it has a capital adequacy of 15.74%, with the domestic NIM of 3.74%, net profit of 1,396 crores for the Q3, return of assets of 0.80%. Rather more, not going more in the details of the bank's performance, coming to some key indicators on the asset quality, we have the net NPA of 1%, as I told, and the provision coverage ratio of 93.59%. The credit cost is just 1.41% with a slippage of 1.17%. India opened its first branch in Colombo in 1932, which is 25 years of its existence in India. That shows the importance the Indian Bank felt even those times to have a presence in the Sri Lanka. We have 3 branches over here. We have I would say 2 branches. In Colombo, we have domestic unit, we have foreign currency unit, and we have a branch also in Jaffna. We provide all the type of services in the banking, whether it is in domestic currency or it is in USD. Even though during the last financial year, there was the outflow of non-resident deposits, which was in the US dollars, but Indian Bank continued to fund the businesses here in the USD, and we have a total business of 93 million USD as on February end. If we come to the trade between the India and Sri Lanka, it has developed since 2000 after the signing of free trade agreement between India and Sri Lanka. Both imports and exports over the period has grown, so has the tourism between the two countries. Even the FDI from India to the Sri Lanka has grown to USD 2.2 billion, and it is continuously growing. During last few months, some of the key decisions had been made by both by the government of India as well as the government of Sri Lanka through the central banks, both Reserve Bank and Central Bank of Sri Lanka. First, the Indian Rupee has been designated as a legal currency by Central Bank of the Sri Lanka, which enabled the Reserve Bank had also come out with the guidelines for settlement of trade between various countries in INR. A detailed guideline has been published by the Reserve Bank of India on 11th July 22, which has been further clarified through various FAQs issued by the Reserve Bank of India, and even Ministry of Finance through their circular dated 26th August 22 has clearly defined that any exports or imports where the settlement happens in INR, it will be deemed as an export or an import, and all the benefits which otherwise an export in USD or any other hard currency happens, same benefits are available to the exports in INR. Coming to the settlement of trade in INR, Indian Bank is happy to announce that we are one of the banks who had associated with 3 local banks in Sri Lanka by opening 3 special Vostro accounts. We have bank with the Commercial Bank of Ceylon, we have the account with NDB, and we have also the account with Ceylon Bank. And we had also started the transactions since January 23 at the beginning of this calendar year, and we had already handled some 3 or 4 transactions. It is not what is important about it that the transaction has started. Whether it makes economic sense for having a trade in INR is important. For understanding an economic sense for any trade, 2 things are important. So one is settlement, one is the cost of settlement, third is the time period within which the settlement happens. First, the 2 countries are in the same time zone, which enables, if a transaction is initiated in Sri Lanka or in India, it can be settled within the same time zone, within, we can say, even a 5 minutes. SWIFT says the transaction can be even settled in 4 minutes. That is their quickest. So we can also look for the settlement of any trade transaction between India and Sri Lanka within 4 minutes. That is the quickness which can be achieved by going to the settlement in INR. Second point, sir, it reduces the reduction in settlement time. As of now, whenever we do any trade, it goes through the hard currency, say USD, and at least 4 banks are involved. It is the exporter bank, say in India, importer bank in Sri Lanka, and then there are 2 Nostro banks which may be in Europe or maybe in US. The whole money moves from, say, Sri Lanka to the European country or any bank in US, then comes to the India. And we receive the MT-103, which is the advice saying that this money has flown from so-and-so, and it is to be giving all the details that money has to be credited to so-and-so. But all the banks as of today also wait for MT-940 to ensure that money has actually got credited in the Nostro account, which is always 1 day lag because of having the other bank in the different time zone. So instead, if we are settling it between India and Sri Lanka in INR, and we have a special Vostro accounts in it, as soon as any MT-103 starts from, say, India to Sri Lanka or Sri Lanka to India, both it will be settled immediately because we don't need the confirmation that the balance or the account balance has been, or that transaction amount has been credited in the Nostro account, because we have a Vostro account which we have access both to. We don't have any intermediary bank in between. Third, it reduces the settlement cost. As of now, whenever we do any trade in hard currency, there is an exchange margin, say first Sri Lanka USD, then there will be exchange margin USD INR, and then there will be also a commission between the 2 Nostro banks who are involved in it, because minimum there are 2 Nostro banks. And even a small example, if 1,000 rupees is remitted from here to India, or $1,000 are remitted from here to India, it doesn't get $1,000 credit in India. Something or other gets deducted in between, and it remains a mystery what amount and how that amount has been calculated, which the Nostro banks deduct. And the banks both in India and the Sri Lanka are helpless to explain even why this amount was different from the last transaction, even though amount remains the same. So it removes all those obstacles which we are observing while having a trade in any of the hard currency. Secondly, is a dependency on the prime currencies will reduce, which is very important in present scenario. Me being the treasury head, I have seen the movement of the USD. USD dollar index, if we have seen on the 3rd Feb, it was 101. Now it has reached 104. So within a 1 month, it has moved 3 bips up against major hard currencies. So which impacts across the globe all the currencies in which we are trading in. So the USD has become, what I mean to say, was the very most fluctuating currency as of now. Even intraday, the fluctuation of USD with the other currencies is very steep, which was not seen, say, 1 year or more than one and a half year back. And sir, if we are today having any trade transaction between India and Sri Lanka, we need to have the Nostro accounts with each and every bank has to open a Nostro account with the counterparty. Here, the beautiful aspect of it is we don't need to have the special Vostro accounts for each and every bank. It is with the 1 or 2 or couple of special Vostro accounts can take trade transaction, can handle any trade transaction of any other bank in India, even though they may not be having special trade transaction, special Vostro account. I will explain it. If we have some importer from India, he is getting the goods from a customer in India who has an account with, say, Punjab National Bank. And Punjab National Bank doesn't have special Vostro account as of today. So it is not necessary that Punjab National Bank has to open a special Vostro account. Only then the customers of the Punjab National Bank can settle in INR. The bills can still be raised in INR. Invoice can be raised in INR. It can be settled with any of the Vostro accounts already opened. And in India, the money will be sent to the respective bank through the RTGS or NEFT, and it will get the credit. To get the exporter to have the benefit of the exports, there is a site in which all the exports and imports are getting registered, which is with the RBI, which is called EDPMS and IDPMS. Each transaction, whenever we will receive any payment, we get it registered there also. So based on that, the Punjab National Bank will issue the certificate, the realization of export proceeds to the exporter, and that exporter will get all the export incentives which he would have otherwise got on the any exports in the hard currency. Bank also is issuing, our bank is also issuing and confirming and advising any of the LCs issued by any bank in the Sri Lanka to see that the volume of settlement in INR increases. Thank you.
Thank you very much, General Manager, Treasury of the Indian Bank, Mr. Satish Kumar. So, ladies and gentlemen, up next we have got an online presentation, and joining us, the Deputy General Manager of the Department of External Investment Operations of the Reserve Bank of India, Mr. Praveen Kumar.
Good afternoon. I hope you can hear us.
Yes, very much, loud and clear.
Thank you very much. Respected State Minister of Finance of Sri Lanka, Honorable Governor of CBSL, His Excellency High Commissioner of India and Sri Lanka, other dignitaries, bankers, and dignified guests. Thank you for inviting us to be a part of this program. I am Sundar Murthy. I am a Chief General Manager in the Department of External Investments and Operations. I have with me a very high-level set of my colleagues. In addition to my own, from people from my department, we also have Lata Radhakrishnan, a General Manager in the Trade Division of the Foreign Exchange Department of RBI, under whose umbrella, the entire circulars which which have been referred to earlier by the banks have been issued, and so we have brought together the entire team to be there present in this very important discussion for us. The use of INR, and not only INR, even it could be domestic currencies in trade, bilateral settlements is an important agenda for us that we are pursuing. This is we've tried to take many steps to facilitate that to happen. We've been working very closely with CBSL in both bilateral and multilateral forum to resolve a lot of issues that have been faced over the last year or so, and we stand committed to doing whatever it takes to enable this. So as one of the bankers mentioned earlier, we know that it's not all. I mean, we are moving into a new regime. Have not yet been resolved, and we are actively considering it. There are many moving parts, so we have to take into account all the stakeholders before we actually come out with a policy, and we are working on that. We have come out with something of what we call a local currency settlement framework, and that is what my colleague Mr. Praveen Kumar will be just talking about in a moment. We have a couple of slides, and we'll just try to present. This is a framework that we think is a template for how we can use our domestic currencies in a better way, and we think that this is something that we would like to see going ahead. So this is kind of a covering what has already been done, but also setting some kind of roadmap for the future. So without taking much time, I'll turn this over to Mr. Praveen Kumar, and he will do the presentation in just a moment.
Thank you, sir. We would like to introduce the proposed local currency settlement framework and its potential benefits. The proposed LCS, that is local currency settlement, envisages the use of local currencies primarily for settlement of current account and permissible capital account transactions. The potential benefits of the proposed LCS will be, it will facilitate trade settlement in local currencies and reduce dependence on the hard currencies like US dollar. The switch to local currencies from dollar will result in saving on account of foreign currency conversion fees and enable an easier flow of capital. It will also reduce the cost of transaction and do away with the practice of trading via third currency and thus save money on currency exchange. Trading in local currency may also help a flip in bilateral trade and investment, and it will be easily available for trade credit, export advance, and liquidity in currency of the partner country. And thereby there will be a greater economic and financial market integration. Incidentally, Reserve Bank has come out with a circular on July 11, 2022, envisaging a broad framework for cross-border trade transaction in INR. It deals with trade invoicing, settlement in INR, a market-determined exchange rate, and usage of surplus balance in INR that may interest the business community present here. Under this framework, AD banks in India may open a special rupee Vostro accounts of correspondent banks of the partner trading country, for the example here Sri Lanka, and Indian exporters undertaking exports of goods and services through this mechanism shall be paid the export proceeds in INR from the balances in the designated a special rupee Vostro account of the correspondence bank of the partner country, that is Sri Lanka. It will also act as a Nostro account of the Sri Lankan banks, and this mechanism thus will obviate the necessity of dollar for such cross-border trade transactions. Similarly, Indian importers undertaking imports through this mechanism shall make payments in INR, which shall be credited to the special rupee Vostro account of the correspondent bank of the partner country. The proposed LCS framework of settlement in domestic currency, that is INR or LKR, will include the use of correspondent banking framework that I will explain in the next slide. And the settlement of currency will be mutually decided by the trading entities. It proposes to cover all current and permissible capital account transactions. The exchange rate for the currency conversion will be market determined. However, in transition phase, when there is no market with direct exchange rate between the two currencies, that is INR and LKR, the exchange rate between the currencies of the two partner countries would be derived using a cross currency rate, that is dollar, euro, or anything, any other hard currency. In case of INR, a special non-resident rupee account, a special rupee Vostro accounts can be opened with Indian banks by the non-residents. The surplus accumulated in INR can also be invested in permissible instruments like GSEC, T-bills, export-import advance flows management, and other as per APDR circular dated July 11. And it can also be freely repatriated in freely convertible currency or in the domestic currency of the overseas exporters, that is Sri Lanka. The proposed LCS model that that is shown in this slide, it enables businesses to settle their trade transactions with their partner overseas using local currencies. In this framework, for example, the importer and exporter may enter into a trade contract and mutually decide the modality of settlement, including the currency of invoice. Let us suppose INR has been mutually agreed as the settlement currency. On shipment of goods and submission of necessary trade documents to the importer in currency A, that is Sri Lanka, will advise its bank in Sri Lanka to make payment to the exporter's account in Bank B, that is in India. Bank A in Sri Lanka, who is maintaining a Nostro account, for example, SRV account, in an Indian Bank B, will intimate Bank B for payment of to the exporter in INR, subject to availability of funds. Thus, the transaction will be settled through a correspondent banking relationship between Bank A and Bank B through the SRV account, and transfer. Finally, the Bank B will transfer the export proceeds to the exporter in India as the end beneficiary. Similar mechanism can also follow for the export payments from Sri Lanka. In case funds are not available in Nostro account, following options are proposed for funding the account. Commercial banks may undertake swaps in local currency, letter of credit in INR, and possibility of a bilateral currency swap agreement between central banks. These possibilities may be explored in due course. Coming to way forward, suitable modifications in respective regulations based on requirements as they emerge from operations over a period of time. We may explore lines of credit, trade credit, and export advance in domestic currencies. Hedging instruments can be used to address currency risk in domestic currencies, and there may be some fiscal incentives and other avenues to encourage trade in local currencies. We can also, going forward, we can also explore the integration of national payment systems such as NEFT, RTGS, and UPI. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. The team from the Department of External Investment Operations of the Reserve Bank of India. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we wrap up the formal presentations, and now it's time for the brief remarks by our dignitaries on the stage. Then afterwards, we will have the questions, your proposals being entertained. So first, I would like to call upon His Excellency, the High Commissioner of India here in Sri Lanka, His Excellency Gopal Bagle, to add your brief remarks, sir.
Thank you very much. Honorable State Minister of Finance, Your Excellency Shehan Semasinghe, Honorable Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Dr. Veerasinghe, other dignitaries and senior officials from Government of Sri Lanka, captains of Sri Lankan industry, Indian financial sector representatives, my colleagues from the High Commission, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to you. I will try to be very, very brief in my remarks because I am neither an exporter nor importer nor a financial sector expert. but yes, I do have the privilege of working with a fantastic team in the High Commission, which has put together this event. We felt the need for this event, as has been mentioned to you, by a series of steps taken by the two regulators, central banks of the two countries, CBSL here and the Reserve Bank of India. You have heard about that in various presentations. And we felt that perhaps, as has been rightly pointed out in a couple of presentations, the need for wider dissemination of the information, as well as creating confidence among both the banking community as well as the traders, the trading community. So I am very gratified, Honorable Governor, that when I proposed rather informally that we might perhaps get together, and if you would like to give the benefit of your views and your address to an audience, you readily agreed, sir. And similarly, when I requested the Honorable State Minister for Finance, he was also very forthcoming. So this event is essentially because of your readiness, which has always been available to us to promote a stronger economic partnership and ties between our two countries. I would also like to sincerely thank the banks, the Reserve Bank, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, and compliment, of course, the Bank of Ceylon, the Indian Bank, and the State Bank of India, and taking initial steps. I'm very glad that the State Bank has taken this step of first pilot transaction, and Indian Bank has entered into corresponding arrangements. So has the Bank of Ceylon, and RBI has taken a number of steps. CBSL has taken a number of steps from this end. So these are all very encouraging signs. And while the information has been available in the public domain for some time, but we wanted to bring this together on a single platform from a single stage, so that all of you who have interest not only of your businesses, but the interest of a more vibrant India-Sri Lanka economic partnership at your heart, more vibrant and more speedy economic recovery of Sri Lanka at your heart, we could convey these views to you, all of you, and those who are not here but would be tuning in or reading about these views. So that is the first part of what I wanted to say. The second part really is that in the context of the growing economic partnership between India and Sri Lanka, which has been manifested in the statistics you heard and you saw, the growing bilateral trade, the growing investment from India, and also growing development cooperation funding from India, and also the type of support that India has been able to come up with in the past, especially in the past year. I think this is right time that we take steps and more steps so that our businesses can come closer together. We heard the Reserve Bank of India mention, and if I understand correctly, although finance, as I said, is not my specialization, that the facility can be available for current account and also settlements in select capital accounts. I think perhaps in time it might also lead to using INR for investment, and that's a good sign, because Indian investment has been growing in Sri Lanka in the sectors of Sri Lanka's priority, namely infrastructure, which includes energy, renewable energy, power, which includes manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, and we attach priority to bringing in more investment from India into Sri Lanka. Why? Because we believe that Sri Lanka's economic recovery and sustained economic growth will be trade-led, will be investment-led. And in this endeavor, I think, and we firmly believe, that use of Indian rupees as means of trade settlement will not only help Sri Lanka in its current situation, but also will lay the foundation for a more longer term, greater and closer economic partnership between India and Sri Lanka. Why do I say so? You just heard the remarks from the Indian Bank about bringing together all the currency which is collected from whom? The Indian tourists. Now imagine that the Indian tourists, and yesterday I was at an event where your colleague, Honorable Harin Fernando ji, was there to launch a special product aimed at attracting Indian tourists. As you know, Since 2018, the figures that I have with me, my colleagues have with us in the High Commission. Since 2018 till 2022, India has been the largest source of tourists arriving into Sri Lanka. So we would like that to grow. And one way to do that is, of course, have a very good PR campaign, make Sri Lanka more known, more familiar to prospective Indian tourists. But another way also, and a complementary way, is to create mechanisms by which Indian tourists can come and, for example, pay in Indian rupees. That will make Sri Lanka even more attractive a destination for them. We have had challenges of COVID, we have had challenges of the difficulties, but I think India-Sri Lanka partnership through these challenges has become even stronger. And it is in this spirit that we have tried to find solutions which suit Sri Lanka's requirements. Use of Indian rupees for trade settlement is one such a step. And I think with the cooperation of everyone over here, we have heard you about the challenges. We have also heard the benefits that can accrue. And I think while the benefits are long-term, challenges that have been mentioned are really are perhaps in some sense logical for the initial steps. And with more information and more steps from corresponding authorities, I'm sure that we will be able to address them. I would like to end with two small points. One is that together with Indian settlement in Indian rupees for trade and tourists, I think what can greatly help that process is also digitization of payments. And I'm very happy that, again, we have been working closely with both the government of Sri Lanka and the Central Bank of Sri Lanka for making it possible for some of these mechanisms, digital payment mechanisms from India being launched into Sri Lanka, so that in due course, like the Indian UPI system has now entered into an agreement with Singapore, some mechanism of that type can emerge in future. But in the meanwhile, we can have, through other mechanisms, other digital mechanisms, settlement of transactions, especially geared towards Indian tourists in Indian rupees. The last point, ladies and gentlemen, is about the rapid changes in India which are taking place. The digitization of financial sector is, I think, one of the most far-reaching stories of changes taking place, which have taken place in India in the last 3 to 4 years. Just to give you an example, 2 examples rather, when we began the Digital India mission in 2014, India was ranked 122nd in per capita use of data. Today, India is number 1 in per capita use of data. Second example is the number of digital transactions the world over. 41% of those transactions take place in India. So clearly, in India, the fintech sector has evolved, has developed, and because of the proximity, geographical proximity, because of the familiarity that we have between people of India and Sri Lanka, and between the business and trade communities of the two countries, I think it is quite logical for the governments and all those who can to come forward and facilitate even closer interaction between the financial sectors of the two countries. And I think as India grows and goes towards its Amrit Kal, that is after having completed 75 years, go towards 100 years in 2047, and as Sri Lanka also envisages to emerge as a developed country by 2048, I think this is the period, these are the sectors where we really stand to benefit not only the business and industry, but also the common people of both the countries. There would be, I'm sure, a number of questions, and if there is anything I can answer, though in the company of such a distinguished panel of experts, my knowledge about finance, which is almost non-existent, will further pale into insignificance. However, if I can answer your questions after the remarks by the 2 other dignitaries, I shall be very happy to.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Next, we'd like to call upon the Honorable Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, to add your remarks. Use the mic. No.
Your Excellency, Commissioner Bagley, Honorable State Minister Semasinghe, distinguished the officials and the business community and the members from the diplomatic service and the Indian High Commission. So first of all, let me thank for organizing this event, especially to the High Commission of India. In fact, I can remember when we had this conversation with the High Commissioner Bagley, I think several times. As he mentioned earlier, when he basically at the beginning, especially last year, when he has the idea of allowing this INR transaction between India and Sri Lanka for trade, I think we were very happy to have this initiative, especially what I can share with you from our side. Central Bank of Sri Lanka has been making this request several times from our colleagues at RBI, several times in the past. But because there were several requests from our side, especially people who are doing business with India, and also due to growing trade between India and Sri Lanka, and growing investments coming to India, and growing Indian businesses who are moving here and having a lot of interest in India, there were requests whether we can have this INR transaction between India and Sri Lanka. And as I said, we made the request, but obviously this is not a policy decision which can make easily, despite the requests that we have been making. Because it's an important decision for any country to promote their currency, the domestic currency, as internationalization of domestic currency is a very, very important milestone for any country. So India has made that decision some time ago. And in that journey, I think we understand earlier in the INR was basically freely available only in Nepal and Bhutan at the beginning. Because there's close linkage and integration. And later, now with the RBI decision to promote INR as an international currency, in that journey, I think I would say this is a first important step that they have taken. It's the first important step towards a long journey of making Indian currency as an international currency. I think this is a very important step. We, as a neighboring country which has a strong integration already with India, we stand benefit. This is where we were very happy when this was announced. And I can remember, especially last year, when we were facing very difficult, the hard currency liquidity issues. I can remember a lot of Indian, business leaders here have been coming and asking me whether they can at least allow for them to use INR at least for their trade transactions because lack of liquidity in hard currencies. This year we were very keen, and High Commission has, and also RBI, our colleagues, helped a lot in this process. And we basically first made as a designated currency for trade transaction, and our banks were happy and they very they efficiently opened their accounts. I'm happy to see that there have been already transactions happening. And the next steps from our side, when I had the discussion with High Commissioner Bagley on this topic, this is where we shared ideas. We need to move from here gradually to another different path to promote this trade and investment between India and Sri Lanka to another, basically next stage, which is at the beginning now, the exports and import trade transaction, underlying trade transaction can happen in INR between two countries. It's obviously you all heard the benefits of and efficiency and cost savings of having a trade between two countries in bilateral currencies rather than a third currency, efficiency and the savings are obviously clear. This is where I think we stand to benefit, especially at the beginning for trade transactions. And then next step, we all know in terms of exports and imports, we export 20% of what we import from India, although those are both growing and more integration is happening. This is where I'm happy to see the way forward, the roadmap, which basically going to facilitate not only the trade, but also services, all current account transactions, and also capital transaction, to the extent permissible capital transactions, foreign direct investment and others. This is where in terms of settlement of INR and SLR, Sri Lanka Rupee, where the balance between the volumes can be matched if that is extended for all, mainly to all current account transactions. Especially we know India is a big tourism market for Sri Lanka, Indian tourists. Sri Lanka is a big market. And this is where even the investment, a lot of interest from Indian investment, even a lot of investment negotiations are also going on. And given Indian economy is growing and we are stand to benefit as a closest neighbor and with very high integration. And this is where I think the expansion of this facility over a period of time, beyond trade, all current account transaction and the capital transaction will certainly benefit both countries in terms of investment, business, in terms of efficiency in trade. And next step is, as High Commissioner Barclay rightly explained, the technology use of payment and settlement digitalization. India has made a significant progress in recent past. This is where the next step, especially we are working with our payment settlement agencies, with Indian counterparts, to adopt what they did recently with Singapore, basically Rupee, adoption of Rupee, and facilitate digital payments and settlement. That will be, I think, is going to be a significant step that will boost the trade, investment, everything going forward. I think that is the next step. And also, I should here basically must thank the RBI and Indian government for especially helping us in Sri Lanka as difficult times. We all know that last year, India RBI, the SU facilities and the currency swap and the bilateral trade, emergency trade facilities help a lot for Sri Lanka in the most difficult times, and when we had the significant severe impact of the economic crisis last year. That Indian government authorities basically was a lifeline at that time. We should appreciate that. I must thank India for that support. And obviously, even that process recently in terms of financing assurances, India first came up with the financial assurances, and India always considered Sri Lanka as a very close, genuine, good friend and help all the way at difficult times. And we we are very grateful for Indian authorities for helping at these difficult times. Even now, this going forward, internationalization of INR and facilitating transaction, more integration with India and Sri Lanka certainly will benefit both countries. That we all understand. That's where I can see, I'm very happy to see. When I was invited, I thought it could be a small crowd, but now I am so impressed. The interest that I have seen here when I moved into the hall is full of a lot of interest that I can see. I see a lot of prospect. And this is why it's important from your side as well, Your Excellency, to encourage, promote the trade, investment, everything happening in INR is an important part. To this transaction, this facilities to be successful, we need to encourage both sides, for our importers, our exporters to accept INR as a trading currency, and their exporters also to accept INR as a trading currency. That's an important thing. That's why I'm happy that I saw there are some incentives. Obviously, there's an inbuilt incentive in terms of cost effectiveness and timeliness, efficiency is already there. I'm sure people who are doing business, our bankers here, would certainly support our businesses here, both imports, exports, and going forward, all the transactions, all other capital and current account transactions. That will help both countries. And I hope this is going to be on the first, and I would expect this kind of the events with all the new steps going forward, we'll need to have and promote this as fast as possible, so that will certainly help Sri Lanka and both India to benefit for both countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, the Honourable Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe. Next, I would like to call upon the Honourable State Minister of Finance of the Government of Sri Lanka, Mr. Shehan Semasinghe, to add your brief remarks.
His Excellency, the High Commissioner, Honorable Gopal Bagle, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, distinguished guests. I will not take much time, Excellency, because the Governor explained how Sri Lanka and India has been working to overcome the difficult period, the challenging periods of Sri Lanka. I'm sure with the usage of INR, the new initiative will have a new beginning for trade between Sri Lanka and India. Also, I wish if it could be extended to the service areas also. As you rightly said, tourism becomes a very important area when it comes to India and Sri Lanka. 2022 was the most challenging year for Sri Lanka. To overcome these challenges, it is my duty to make a word on that. We appreciate the assistance we got from India. The extension of the credit lines, humanitarian and emergency assistance, and the assistance we got for importation of fuel, essential food items, medicine. We really appreciate the support the High Commissioner and the team extended us. We wish to extend our thanks, gratitude to the Government of India as well as people of India for helping Sri Lanka at the most difficult, challenging periods. We all are looking forward for the IMF program approval. And when it comes to India, the strong financial assurances which was extended to IMF on behalf of Sri Lanka, we appreciate your support on that. I think from the government's point, our main focus is the economy. We do understand in the recent past, most of the decisions the government took are hard decisions. We have kept the parliament informed. We have kept all the committees informed. And we have communicated the message to the general masses in Sri Lanka why we had to take these hard decisions. That is to ensure that Sri Lanka will not go back to a history which we don't even want to dream of. So when it comes to our economic recovery, India was a strong partner of ours. As Excellency said, the investment avenues which are taking place right now in Sri Lanka on infrastructure development, especially on the energy sector, on the transport, the connectivity sector will benefit Sri Lanka. And I'm sure we will further expand the possible avenues that both Sri Lanka and India could work together. We are also revisiting the trade agreements, Excellency. We have to revisit the trade agreements. Starting from 2000, India-Sri Lanka trade agreement has benefited Sri Lanka. But however, with all changes taking place, as a government, we will revisit the trade agreements. We will have bilateral discussions also on the same and make sure that Sri Lanka will benefit more out of the trade agreements which are in existence right now. So with that word, Excellency, once again, I thank you for your timely intervention when we really wanted support as a country. As a nation, we wanted that support from you. Your intervention, your staff here at the High Commission worked very closely, tirelessly with our staff at the Ministry of Finance as well as with the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. So once again, we thank, and I'm sure Sri Lanka will overcome this situation. The economy is getting stabilized with all the hard decisions we have taken. We know it is difficult for people to absorb. They're really painful reforms that we have gone through. But however, we can see results coming up. So 2023 will be still challenging for us, but 2024 onwards, we can go in for a growth of the economy, which all Sri Lankans and all partners will benefit. Thank you very much, Excellency.
Thank you very much, the Honorable State Minister of Finance. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, time to open the floor for the exchange of views, and would like to propose to begin by inviting the comments from various major stakeholder groups joining here, gracing this occasion. Especially would like to, ideally like to hear from one representative from each organization or a group to begin this particular session. And when you ask your questions, would like to request all of you to have them in a brief mode. Plus, when you're asking the question, please specify the person or the organization that you want your query to be answered by. Right. Now, we are opening the floor for the queries, your proposals, your suggestions. If you can raise your hand so that we can provide you with a mic. Over here, please. Where's the mic?
My name is Sudat Fernando.
Where is that?
From here.
All right, okay.
I came with the invitation of International Chamber of Commerce. So I'm representing the glove industry. I'm working for a company called ATG. And we have been exporting to various countries in the world, right across the world. So I would like to ask from the head table or any other authority, especially His Excellency, whether there is any possibility to enhance the quota that you have allocated to Sri Lanka, which will be a very helpful thing at this moment. And just want to ask that, and also that is the main question that I want to ask, since I have to with the time limitation.
Your Excellency.
Thank you for your presence, first of all, and thank you for your question. We do have some specific requests from the government of Sri Lanka, and I'm glad Your Excellency, the State Minister, touched upon the issue of trade, but that's a wider question. We, as you know, the FTA has been there and SAFTA has been there. As His Excellency mentioned, their benefits have reached the Sri Lankan manufacturers, traders, other sections. Now, the question is, what do we do after that? From here, I think one way should be to resume the negotiations on ETCA, and I'm very happy to inform you that both governments in principle have been interacting in this regard. We have received some suggestions from the government of Sri Lanka which are under consideration. So in the course of time, we do expect the resumption of the negotiations on ETCA, which have not taken place for some time. So that is as far as the trade negotiations are concerned. The specific question you asked, unfortunately, at the moment, I am not aware of the specifics regarding quota and all, but we do have some request from the government of Sri Lanka about, and of course the concerned industry about enhancement of quota in their segment. I'm not sure if your industry has made any representation.
Thank you very much. And there's another small suggestion, His Excellency, because now rubber gloves to India is duty free. But ours is rubber coated gloves, so but there is a tax duty of 23%, it seems. So if you can give at least a duty-free concession for that, hope Indian buyers would enjoy that, and that would be benefited for both.
Thank you. I take note of your suggestion, and of course we would be very happy to arrange a separate interaction on the various commodities and various items which are covered under bilateral trade. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right. Next one, please. Can we have the mic here in the centile? Oh, there's already a gentleman with the mic.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're audible.
Good evening. First of all, I thank you, High Commission of India, for organizing such an insightful event. My name is Sandeep Sharma. I represent Volvo Eicher Commercial Vehicles. We are into importing of commercial vehicles and market in the island. So my question is, like, as you all are aware, that in the last almost 3 years, that import of commercial vehicle is suspended. So there has been no import, and vehicles are required in the market, especially in the infrastructure segment for managing all projects and all. So my question is to Honorable Minister, that when we can assume that import can be resumed in INR rupees commercial vehicles, so that again the business can be started and the demand in the market can be fulfilled.
I got your question. Actually, it's not only vehicles we have restricted. There are a few more items which have been restricted mainly due to the lack of forex availability in Sri Lanka. But however, the last few weeks we have relaxed few restrictions, but until the economy stabilizes fully, we will not be able to relax all the suspensions immediately. But also I would like to say this is not the policy of the government. We want free trade to take place. We don't want to intervene to free trade or the economic activities. But unfortunately, the situation was such, the government had to intervene. So no sooner the economy stabilizes and the forex availability becomes normal, I think we should be able to relax almost all the restrictions we have. But it will take a couple of more months, because it's too early for us to predict the timelines, because most of the reforms we did were in effect from 1st of January. So we are yet to see what the results are, but the results are going to be positive for sure. So this is something which the Ministry of Finance is also working on. It is not the policy of the government, once again I would like to reiterate. So we will relax once the economy stabilizes fully.
And before we move on with the next question, would like to kindly request the audience to limit your questions to the topic that we discussed today. And about the all aspects, the Indian High Commission will organize separate sessions. Would like to request you all to limit the questions to the discussed subject area, which is about the use of national currencies for economic transactions between India and Sri Lanka. The next question, please.
Thank you for feedback, sir. Thank you.
Good evening, Your Excellencies on the head table. My name is Kishore Reddy. I'm representing the Indian CEO Forum. Members of the forum had quite a lot of questions when we actually said there is this topic on INR trade. And thank you, I think, the High Commission of India for organizing this. Now, I think from the list of questions, there's hardly any left. Thanks for all the answers. And getting back to one of the important things from the answers, I think we should actually, the forum had actually met Governor a few days back as well. And I think thank you, Governor, for actually addressing that there is no restrictions from the central bank because Sri Lanka, the Indian currency had been approved as the approved foreign currency for all, as a legal currency for all transactions. So thank you, sir, for that. So hence we need to actually ask this question probably from RBI because there had been, everybody has requested for investments and how the current account for settlement in INR for trade is of course allowed, and services we need to get clarity on that. Permissible capital accounts, we need to get clarity on what are the permissible clarity accounts, the capital accounts. And of course, I think the bilateral arrangements that could be done for arranging the foreign currency between both the countries, that I suppose the High Commissioner as well as RBI will have to discuss with the Central Bank of Sri Lanka and come to some agreement to provide the currency. So first question, of course, to RBI is that the settlement, can it be for investments and other retail transactions? And if right now it doesn't look like, and we need clarity on the permissible ones.
From Reserve Bank of India, you want to answer that question? RBI?
I think they're online, so I think that, or we could wait for that clarification. So, Governor, this question is actually for you again. I think we did discuss this earlier as well. You had mentioned as legal currency, Indian currency would be acceptable in Sri Lanka as any other legal currency. So somebody actually came to the airport again after our conversation as well, and they offered Indian currency and they didn't accept it. So just a small clarification on that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reddy. Honorable Governor, yes.
Yeah, thank you. I think now I think there was an answer to that, but Bank of Ceylon, I thought they said they collect Indian currency and then they sell Indian currency back to people who are basically going to India. So I thought these banks.
This was at the duty free.
As duty free.
Yeah. Where they were accepting all the other legal currencies except the.
Based on our rules, once we designate a currency as a designated currency, all currencies should be accepted by basically, say, someone coming from there. I think they should accept. Probably, the acceptance depends on. Individuals can make a decision that it's a matter of liquidity actually. So, thing is that if someone accepts Indian INR, and if he is not confident of that, he can use that for their transaction or can easily be deposited in a bank account. I think that's why at the beginning you may have this kind of issues, but technically as a regulation, I don't think there is no prohibition. But if someone says, please give me, here in our law, no one, any transaction within Sri Lanka, legal tender is Sri Lanka rupees, no one can reject accepting SLR, Sri Lanka rupee, for local transaction. But in other currency, it is a choice that it has to have a consent that you accept US dollar or Indian rupee. I think this is where it's important, this more liquidity, more facility that Indian INR can be easily transacted, traded. Liquidity issue is this thing can happen, but I think over a period of time, once they are confident that they can use this collecting currency and can be use it again, then people will start accepting more. I think that's probably the reason. I don't know why that was not accepted, but is not something that I don't think by the rule.
Thank you, Governor. I think that was, good. This is for actually some of the banks who actually have the INR accounts opened already. So is it that, I think it is for State Bank of India, Bank of Ceylon, as well as Indian Bank representatives who are here. Can any of the companies, whether it's Indian or Sri Lankan companies, open accounts with the bank in INR? And do you have enough INR to start raising LCs or TTs to any of the transactions in trade?
We'll start with the Bank of Ceylon. Anyone from BOC to answer that question? Yes, lady.
Yes, I'm the AGM Trade Finance here, Rochelle Fernando. We do have opened already the accounts with denominated currency as INR, and we do facilitate a lot of import and export transactions. At the moment, we are working on new facility with regard to the import transactions, and we have quite a lot of transactions that we do with INR, especially with the Chennai branch, where we facilitate a lot of transactions through the Chennai. So yeah, so we do have open accounts at the moment.
May I add something to it?
Yes, please.
I think the question of acceptability is linked to awareness. What the Honorable Governor mentioned. And in fact, if you really look at it, one of the objectives of this interaction is to raise both awareness and the confidence of the stakeholders, which we hope will lead to acceptability of transactions in Indian rupees, whether through banking channels or by rendering it at the points which can accept it. I would like to just remind this audience, Irina, my colleague, is here, who has dealt with this particular facility and other lines of credit. When we opened, Your Excellency, the credit facility of $1 billion last year, which allowed Indian exporters to settle their transactions in Indian rupees, there was some takeoff time which we needed, because the Indian exporters did not realize, and ERD is here with us, so is the central bank, and they know that we needed to work on this aspect, because Indian exporters were willing to export, but they did not understand how this mechanism will work. And they did not understand in the beginning that it is actually going to happen. Now, with the passage of time, which was a few weeks in that case, we were able to provide enough confidence and enough information on how the whole process will work, how they will accept orders, how they will execute orders, where they have to send the documents, and same for the Sri Lankan importers also. I remember, Excellency, when you took office last year, one of our first meetings was chaired by the President, who was at that time the Prime Minister, basically to spread awareness on this side among Sri Lankan stakeholders on how that system is going to work. So I think an exercise like this has at its heart the objective of disseminating information, creating more awareness, creating more confidence, and thereby perhaps also contributing to more acceptability.
The Reserve Bank of India is now ready to answer your question, Mr. Reddy. Joining online. Yes. RBI.
Yeah. My senior colleague, Dr. Aditya Kaya, has joined. Let's respond to you.
Yeah, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. So this is Dr. Aditya Geha, Chief General Manager from the Reserve Bank. So on the specific question of what are the permissible capital account transactions and what other transactions can be done using INR in India. So now the thing is, as we have discussed, the first thing is that basically through the correspondent banking system and the special rupee Vostro accounts which have been opened of Sri Lankan banks in India by Indian banks, some rupees will be available to them to utilize Now, in terms of current account, obviously, the things that come to the mind first and foremost are the trade transactions, which is basically, goods and services which are traded between the two countries. In terms of capital account transactions which are enabled in Indian rupees in India, they can be from external commercial borrowings. They can be also in terms of investment in government securities. They can be investments through the foreign portfolio route. They can be investment in the foreign direct investment route. But each one of them has a set of criteria and regulations. And our authorized dealer banks, which are basically the commercial banks on our side in India, are very well aware of the rules and regulations under FAMA and what are the qualifications for the investments, what are the conditions for the investments in terms of capital account transactions. And they can inform each and every individual who is having the rupee balances through their banks in the special rupee Vostro account, what are the transactions they can do and what will be the conditions they need to fulfill. If there are some specific issues, then banks can, both sides, the Indian banks and the Sri Lankan banks, can write to us or to the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, and we'll be happy to clarify. Thank you.
Right. We have some online questions also coming in. As you can see, we have an online audience as well. You can introduce yourself and ask a question, whoever joining online.
Hi, I'm Samir Mandikar from Bajaj Auto India. Am I audible?
Yes, loud and clear.
Thank you so much for inviting me in this. My question is, will there be any limits imposed on conversion and remittance going forward? And second question is, if LCs are permitted, will the settlements be at site or usance will be permitted also?
From whom do you want to answer the question?
SBI or Indian Bank?
State Bank of India or Indian Bank?
State Bank of India or Indian Bank?
Yes.
The representatives there?
Yeah, I am Satish from representing Indian Bank. LCs can be opened right whether it is site or usance. There is no restrictions on that. And amount is also not a restriction.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Satish. Thank you.
Right. We can entertain more questions from the physical audience. Can we have the mic being presented to that gentleman, please?
I'm Engineer Ravi Singh, representing Chamber of Industries and the OP in Sri Lanka. So I have a manufacturing company. My pointed out for His Excellency Ambassador, when you are getting the item, importing from the item from India, we clearly mentioned that we have some credit line facility in India and Sri Lanka. So we requested item from India to send it to the Indian currency INR. But they clearly mentioned that they are not in a position to send it. I asked why. So they mentioned that when you are doing the export in Indian contest, when you are doing the export in USD, they are getting the incentives. So they didn't aware that when they are doing the export in Indian rupees, they mentioned that they are not getting any incentive from the India. So can you clarify it? Because they didn't aware that. What is the transaction between INR and Sri Lankan one?
Thank you, Engineer Rupee, for that question. I think I was referring to these type of difficulties. I don't know when this particular incident happened. Did it happen recently or a few months ago?
Recently, last week it's happened. I clearly mentioned you can get the information from your embassy or you can directly contact your relatives. Even eyesight, we want to communicate with the chamber to your side as well, but I want to get the information, then I can pass information to them.
So last year when this facility started, between March and May, we had a number of queries from the Indian exporters or prospective exporters as well as Sri Lankan importers and also the government of Sri Lanka and some of our banks over here. Now what we did was, Irina and our colleagues, they answered all their questions. We explained to them how it will work. One thing I don't dispute, that there may be some advantages of settling the transactions in dollars. But there are still a large number of Indian exporters who took advantage of that facility. Just one piece of statistics should suffice. Out of $1 billion, in the last about 8 months or so of the operation of this facility, we have touched $700 million, Irina, a little more? Around $700 million worth of orders have been placed. And more than $400 million worth of goods have actually arrived in Sri Lanka, and payments have been made to Indian exporters. So obviously the system is more than working. But in the beginning there was a lot of questions, and I do not rule out that there would still be pockets where this information is not available. You are most welcome to, after this interaction, touch base with Irina or our other colleagues. We'll be happy to answer any of their questions, and in the process help them and help you.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, time doesn't allow us to entertain more questions. So with that note, we will wrap up this session. Of course, during the fellowship time, you can talk to the respective dignitaries to get your queries being clarified further. So in wrapping up the formalities, would like to express our extreme gratitude, especially to the Honorable State Minister of Finance of the Government of Sri Lanka, Mr. Shehan Semasinghe, His Excellency the Gopal Bagle, the High Commissioner of India here in Sri Lanka, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, the Honorable Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, and all the other distinguished invitees, guests, presenters, and participants, including the Reserve Bank of India officials who have joined online. Thank you very much, everyone, for gracing the occasion. So in wrapping up, would like to invite all of you to enjoy the refreshments being served, and would like to ask the High Commissioner whether you want to add any closing remarks. So thank you very much, everyone. I would like to invite all of you to enjoy the refreshments being served. Take care.